Hello, yes, it's been a while, but I'm back. Like a phoenix from the flames, or is it from the ashes? Krush Dev Diary. So, the good news, I've actually spent a few days this week working on Krush. Now, some of that was spent refactoring and working on some really boring stuff that doesn't have any visual changes, but nonetheless, the game should look pretty different to the last time you saw it. Anyway, as per usual, I am going to go back to my devlog and read off what I did. All the way back on the 26th of October 2014. First thing, fixed hole rendering due to optimizations. Yes, some of you noticed in the last Krush Dev Diary, there was a bug in that the holes were appearing where they shouldn't be, basically. And that's because I made some optimizations that, well, let's say they were a little bit overzealous. So I reversed some of those. It turns out depth testing actually is quite important. What do you know? Next up, added phase object and phase type enumeration. Yes, one of the major changes this time is the addition of randomized phases. Now, I'll talk a bit about those later. But yeah, a while ago, I sort of implemented the backbone for this phase system. I wanted the phase system to be relatively flexible, so I also defined a start, tick, and end paradigm for the phases. So each phase can actually have code that runs during it, so I can do quite a lot of different things with the phases. I also established the conventions for phase rarity. There's common, uncommon, rare, and unique. And obviously, the rarer the phase, the less likely it is to occur. Next up, removed old phase logic. Yep, because, once you've replaced code, there's no point in having it in your code base, so you strip it out. Set phase length to 30 seconds. Traditionally, the phases were about a minute long, but I thought that was a little bit too long. So I have since changed that. I think it's actually currently 15 seconds. Now, I haven't decided precisely how long phases are going to be. It's probably going to be somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds. I've got to say, I quite like it set at 15, so I might keep it there, but it could change. Next up, reduced engine cutoff on collision. Just a minor tweak, I think, but compared to previous versions now, the car is a little bit more sensitive to crashing into stuff. So if you hit the walls and it's not just a light tap, then your engine is going to cut out, and you are probably going to be run over. Next on the list, smooth timescale changes. There are a number of different factors now that can change the speed of the game. For instance, when you get near to the bulldozer, time actually slows down as kind of like an adrenaline mechanic. And there are now phases which have slow motion or fast motion. So one of the things I did was to smooth the actual transition of that, just to prevent sort of, judderiness, as it were. Another thing that I did is I made the camera zoom in when time slows down. So when you're near the bulldozer, the camera pulls in close. It's quite tense. It is quite tense. Next up, re-added car shadow. Yes, when I redid the car sprite, I took out the old shadow, and I have since added in a new shadow, so the car looks a little bit more 3D with just a touch of shading under it. Next up is, a major refactor. This had me stuck for a couple of days. I was working in the logic from the sticker class into the base sprite class to avoid code reuse, basically. So all of the fancy sticker rendering techniques I had to apply back to my core drawing class. So in order to do that, I had to spruce up its handling of OpenGL texture coordinates. So I created a structure to contain all of the information for the texture per sprite. And that's the end of my changelog for the 26th of October. So I got back into the Krush saddle this week, right in the middle of a major refactor, effectively stripping out all of the draw routines from the sticker class and putting them in the sprite class instead, and trying to get the same transitional effects. And that took me a couple of days. That's a couple of days' work to make things look the same as what they did, which is the joy of refactoring, really, and also hunting bugs. My knowledge of how to handle textures in OpenGL is simplistic. Now, in doing these sort of exercises, in practicing, I will become better, which is a good thing. But it's always painful learning new stuff and tackling bugs that arise as a result. So anyway, moving past that 2 days of head scratching, what have we got? Next up, defined text types enum. Yes, because, well, there are different types of textures. My original sprite rendering class could only handle square textures, which is obviously a bit of a shortcoming, because rectangular textures, do have a place. Like the stickers, they're all rectangular textures. So I've basically enhanced support for rectangular textures, which is really basic, but useful. What else did I do? Oh yes, I fixed the tire and shadow Z-index. There was a problem where the shadow was being rendered over two of the tires. Well, it was being rendered over all of them, but the offset made it obscure two of them. So I fixed that Z-index bug, and now all of the tires are appearing and everything's super. Next on my list, slow migration of sticker to sprite. Yes, this is the refactoring. Removal of graphics code from sticker. Yep. Bug fixing. That's the last entry for the 25th of November. 26th of November. Fixed the bug. Written in large capitals, clearly with some excitement. There is an exclamation mark there. Stickers now fully integrated into Sprite. Fantastic. And that's it. That's all I did on the 26th of November. So, good news. I was able to move on to new features. Exciting times. Now, you might actually notice some of these things because they are actually visual changes. But let's go through them. Added window glare effect on the car. Now, if you look when the car turns, there's a flash that goes over the window screen, and it kind of gives it a glassy, reflective appearance. It's not the most sophisticated of effect, but it's pretty nifty, and I kind of like it. So, yeah, that's new. Also, the car, you'll notice in this case, is pink, but it's actually a random colour every single game. Why? Nobody knows, but it's kind of cool, and it's also reflective of the fact that I can change the base car colour. I'm thinking about having car decals, like car stickers that could, give it a unique look, that can spruce it up a little bit, whether it's flames or a number or something like that. So I might do that, to further distinguish the cars. And I don't know about how this is going to tie into the core game. Maybe there'll be unlockable cosmetics, or maybe it'll just stay random. Who knows? Next up is the lighting. I've changed the lighting system quite substantially. I've now added per tile lighting, which gives me incredible flexibility. I can basically set the draw distance to, not the draw distance, but the lighting distance to whatever I want it to be. And this opens up some interesting opportunities for phases, because there's now a dark phase where everything goes dark, you can't see very far, and your sight radius is cut in half, so the arrows don't appear until you're much closer to stuff. And, well, the black arrow is black on very dark, so it's actually very difficult to see. Some objects aren't lit. For instance, the bulldozer, that stays the same luminosity. But fear not, because the bulldozer art that was never intended to be final. It's just a quick and dirty two-dimensional sprite. And at some point, I'm going to redesign the bulldozer to be a little bit more lifelike. I want to turn it into this dirty, smoke-spewing, vibrating, menacing thing, which, kind of shudders across the screen with a bit more conviction instead of just, like a 2D thing. I might even add some 3D effects for it, so it's got a little bit of parallax going on. But that will come in the future, and at that point, I'll also apply the tile lighting to the bulldozer itself, so when it's dark mode, it'll lurk mysteriously, kind of dimly lit on the corners of the screen. So other changes, normals. Normals are basically the perpendicular point to a given vertex, and they help OpenGL calculate lighting. Another thing I've done with the base sprite class is I've now got the potential to have a separate normal per vertex, whereas before there was just a single normal applied to all four. So that's boring, but it did allow me to have smoother lighting, which is always nice. Now, the final thing on my changelog is light dims on engine failure. I'm not sure if you'll get to see this, but if I crash, the headlights go out and the entire arena dims. Not fully, it's still kind of a little bit lit, but it goes to about half brightness, just to let you know that your engine is in fact not working and you might want to turn the ignition, which is, it's done automatically, but all the same. And so, yeah, that's it for my changelogs, but it's not it for my changes, because I've been spending a lot of time working on what I think is a very cool feature, the phases. So I'll give you a rundown of the phases that I've added so far. Now, the colours that appear on each of the phases, they are not final. I've just bunged in any old colour just to sort of differentiate them initially. So, first phase, warm-up phase. It's the blue one at the start. Nothing happens in the warm-up phase, it's just an on-ramp. Welcome to Krush, get going, your target's that way, basically. Next, extra target, that's the red one. It just adds another target to the playfield. Nice and simple. Remove target, that's the dark red. That removes a target from the playfield. Now, the number of targets never goes below 1, so, you've always got one target at least. But if a target's removed, it can throw you out for a loop if you were going for it. So, yeah, it's a factor. Next up, double targets. I think that's the pink one. That doubles the number of targets. So if you've got 4 targets on field, all of a sudden you'll have 8. You'll be able to go crazy and get some insane combinations. Next up, half targets. If you've got 8, all of a sudden you'll have 4. I think one thing I might have to do is limit the number of targets, just so things don't get too crazy on the score front. But I'm reasonably happy to tweak as time goes on. Next up, the time-related effects. Super slow motion. The game slows down to 50% of original speed. I mean everything slows down, so the 15 seconds of this phase will actually take 30 seconds. But everything is like you're moving through molasses. It's, I wouldn't say it was tense. It's actually easier than the base game, but it's all too easy to get used to the slow motion, and then the game snaps back, and then, it's all going super fast. Also, slow motion, which slows the game down to 80% speed. The speed phase, which speeds you up to 110% speed. Just a little bit nippier, makes it harder, of course. And then there's super speed, which I think is 125% speed. Now, everything's synced together, so you can also go 25% faster. But, yeah, it means you've got to react 25% faster, which can be tricky. Special phases. I plan to add a lot of special phases. I plan for some of them to be pretty cool. Dark phase. Everything goes dark. Your sight radius is cut. And that's about it, really. It's just dark. Blind phase. Everything goes kind of mucky green. I don't think it appears, unfortunately, in any of the games. But it removes the HUD and the arrows and everything that could have been of use to you. And it feels, kind of scary, playing without any sort of assistance like that. So that's definitely a bad phase. And then the final one, for now at least, is the hell phase. Now, not much happens in hell phase at the minute, but I'm going to craft a pretty devious experience. Hell phase is going to be infinite. It's going to be the last phase. And the game is going to chuck a bunch of stuff at you. And I'll probably add like a fiery, flamey effect to everything, just to sell the illusion of hell. So those are the phases that are in currently, but that is just the start. I've got some cracking ideas. I want to get a retro phase in, where the game's graphics revert back to traditional Crusher style. I want to get a Matrix phase in, where time is a bit more fluid. Like when you get close to a target, time will stop momentarily. And of course, everything will be green. Disco phase. I quite fancy having some disco music play for the duration of, and there'll be a nice light show going on. Black and white phase. I'll strip out all of the colour, and then maybe even have a sepia phase or a film effect phase, and add sort of, just visual effects, really, and have some fun with it. Make things a bit interesting. Now, I will obviously try and make these effects rare. I don't want them to come up every single game. I want them to be a surprise. And there will be some that actually have a direct effect on gameplay. I'd like to have fast dozer, no dozer, double dozer. I need to add in hole generation as part of the phases. There will be a holy phase, a double point phase, maybe. Jumbo targets, tiny targets. All kinds of variables and settings that I can tweak, and effects. I think there's certainly a great deal of room for creativity, which I like. I realise the random nature of these phases kind of trashes any competitive potential, but nonetheless, they should be fun. Anyway, I shall leave it at that. I think next week we can probably expect some more phases, and maybe I'll start tackling the bulldozer sprite. Maybe start sprucing that up a bit. Get it animated, get some smoke effects. But that's the state of Krush today, and I shall leave you with that. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell.